So you want to be in the club, or what it takes to be a GISP. Okay, so first full-fledged honesty disclaimer. I am not employed in any way, shape, or form by the GIS Certification Institute. I'm not compensated for this. I did earn my GISP credential about 9 years ago, prior to many of the current requirements, but I'm fully aware of them. And I actually know this stuff. I did not stay on a Holiday Inn last night. So what you're getting is the real deal. Okay, so today's presentation, yes, I know it's death by PowerPoint, so bear with me. This is the GISCI sanctioned PowerPoint with a little bit of a twist that I've been asked to give. And because they're such nice folks, I figured I would comply as best I could. We're going to cover some general information on certifications, and a lot of this is based on questions and conversations I've had with folks in the past about the GISP. We're going to talk about the actual certification. We're going to talk about the process and the test that's involved, and kind of where it's going in the future. And I'm sure that's probably a big part of where the conversation is going to go. So let's start at the very beginning, the very base part of it, certification, right? We've heard this term thrown around. We've seen variations on it. And kind of what's the difference between certification and certificates. We've all seen the GIS certificate programs. And so let's kind of break it down a little bit. So a professional certification of some sort is usually given by an organization, right? In this case, in the GIS field, but it's usually given or bestowed upon you by some sort of organization. It's usually focused on a very specific set of skills. So your GIS skills certification, your I don't know, your teaching certification, various specific skills that are required. And it's also part of it also has a combination of requirements, right? So it's not just the education, you have to have experience. Usually there's some sort of test, and it's usually has a bunch of hoops that you have to jump through to get that certification. It's just not kind of handed out. GIS certificates, on the other case, offered by a whole host of universities, shameless plug for Central Connecticut State University. But it's usually bestowed based on your enrollment in a course, right? So you take some sort of training, you take some sort of curriculum and fulfill some sort of academic requirement. You gain knowledge, right? It's very broad in sense. So it's not just a particular aspect of something, but it's usually an entire field or body of knowledge. And these programs can in turn lead to that professional certification that I talked about earlier. So you can get a GIS certificate as part of the journey in getting your GIS certification. You know, potato, well, yeah, it's kind of different in this case. There is a difference. So there's a lot of professional, or I should say there's a few, professional GIS certifications out there. Obviously the GISP that we're going to be talking about today, but ASPERS as well has one. They actually have 5 of them. So depending on whether you want to be a certified geospatial technician or GIS mapping expert, they have 5 different options you can look at there. The U.S. Geospatial Intelligence Foundation has 3 different ones. So those are all federally based. And those are a little bit different as well. And then finally, our folks at Esri and the software firm Esri have 3 different categories. They have like 36 different, or I'm sorry, 12. They have 12 different certifications in total, right? So you can get it in the desktop software, the server software. So Esri as well has their own types of certifications and tests that you can take and achievements that you can make. But again, so 4 different groups, variations in certifications. So when you say, well, I want to get my GIS certificate, you really actually kind of have some options, but each one is going to be different in its own right. So let's talk about the difference between certification and licensure. And this is usually where my surveyors kind of stand out from the crowd, and they kind of raise their hand and say, well, I'm a licensed surveyor. Does that make me, a certified GIS person, or how does that work? Licensure and certification are definitely different. The licensure You wouldn't want to go to a doctor that has a medical certificate, maybe from some online Udemy course that they took or something like that. You'd probably want to go to a licensed physician or a licensed professional to have your teeth done or to have your land surveyed, right? So you want to look at the difference there. There's a whole lot of verification and some really highly specialized training when it comes to licensure. So you definitely want to recognize that. And there's a ton of certifications out there, right? Teaching and various landscape people have their own certification. Web design folks have certifications. So you really kind of want to look at the breakdown. So if somebody says they're licensed versus someone saying, well, they're certified, my wife tells me I'm certified all the time, but I'm sure that means something completely different. But licensure is definitely different than certification. Okay, now let's kind of talk about the subject at hand. The reason, hopefully, a lot of us, if not all of us, are here, is this thing called the GISP. It's not the GISP. It's not the GISP. I always cringe a little bit when I hear that from folks. Oh, you have your GISP. No, it's the GISP. So offered by this organization called the GIS Certification Institute, or the GISCI as they're known, way back in 2003. So I got my GISP about 6 years into the program. And at that time, when it first came out, they wanted to really kind of build the organization, build momentum behind it, and really get people to grasp onto this certification, this idea of it, and really lend a whole lot of foundation and credibility to the GIS industry. And so they had kind of two methodologies or two paths to certification. The first one was called grandfathering. So essentially, if you had been in the GIS industry in some capacity, whatever that was, technical, analytical, managerial, in any kind of way you were involved in GIS, and you had been involved in GIS for at least, I think at the time it was 10 years. So you had to have some time behind you. They would bestow on you the credential of GISP. They also had another path at that time because they recognized that there were plenty of folks who hadn't been in the GIS industry for 10 years, and they wanted to kind of offer them an opportunity as well. So they offered a portfolio review, and that was the path that I took at the time because I didn't have 10 years under my belt. So I followed through on the portfolio review, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more because it's still a big part of the GISP. I don't believe they do the grandfathering anymore, but I could be wrong on that. But the portfolio review is a big piece of it, and that was the path that I took. In 2015, they wanted to add a little more meat, if you will, to the GISP, and so they added a core technical knowledge exam. So in 2015, they produced this test. They spent probably about 3 years developing it and putting it together. And then in 2019, they actually updated it because they realized obviously technology changed, methodologies changed, and there were different things that they wanted folks to be able to know. So they updated it and they kind of continue to update it. So the question I get asked probably the most by young folks, people who are, have maybe spent some time in the industry, when they see my credential and I talk about it is, why? Why should I do this? What value does it have? And essentially what it does is it lets people know that not only can you talk the talk, but you can walk the walk. And you have some folks behind you, the GIS Certification Institute, who will vouch for that. And they'll say, absolutely, Joe Smith has these skills. He's accomplished these things. He has the education and the experience, and he knows what he's talking about with regards to GIS, so he can be trusted. So it really does, give you that level of, I don't want to really say credibility, but it really does kind of solidify you as a professional in terms of when you go for a job, or when you present in front of an organization like this, or when you talk to folks as an authority on GIS, and you can authoritatively talk to, and what you say is what you say, and what you mean is what you mean. So who is the GISCI, or why? The GISCI has kind of three aspects to them. The board it's a diverse board of directors. If you go onto their webpage, you can see them, and there's someone from our area. I don't know if Steve Sharp is in the group or in the community today in the chat room, but Steve Sharp from the Vermont Center of Geographic Information, he is on the board of directors, and if you look at all of them, they are very experienced GIS professionals, and they all contribute to the GISCI in a very valuable way. They also belong to some other organizations. They associate with the American Association of Geographers, the AAG. They have the NISGIC, if you've ever heard of that. They have GITA, the Geospatial Info and Tech Association, and obviously NEURISA, NEURISA's parent organization. NEURISA is very, very heavily involved with the GISCI. And they have some great strategic partners as well, right? These are names we've all heard of: the USGS, the USGIF, and Geotech. They all also provide support and assistance and input and oversight on the GISCI. So they all work kind of in conjunction. We are everywhere. You can kind of take a look at this graphic, and it shows you both across the country as well as around the world. You can see just about every continent and island on the map has someone who's a GISP, and there's almost 10,000 of us. So that's pretty impressive. You can see the top states in the United States: Florida with 851. Speaking of Florida, our keynote speaker, Rebecca Jones, a very, very well-known GIS professional from Florida. So you can kind of see, and then down here, Ohio, down here at the bottom at 295. And New England, just because of our size, New England states are a little further down, but we're still, you can still see there's many of us here in the region. And so we are everywhere. It's not as uncommon as you might think. So where did we start? Where is it going? What does that growth look like? You can kind of see here, they started out back in 2003. Some of the first ones, 29 folks, right? They brought in 29 folks to establish that base, but they've continued to grow, and they're continuing to grow. The idea is that they're going to hit 20,000, over the next decade. So that's a great goal. That'll be pretty impressive to be in that type of group. And of course, that number is going to fluctuate a little bit every year. You're going to have folks who are going to retire, but you're going to have new folks who are going to kind of fill in. So that number is going to continue to grow, though. And I'd like to think that all the folks who are here are going to apply or think about applying for their GISP. You can see when they added the exam there, the numbers continue to grow, right? The exam didn't stop anyone. No one's kind of been stopped by the exam, so it's doable. Don't kind of see that exam requirement as a hurdle that you can't accomplish. So how does it start? How does it happen? How do we find ourselves as a GISP? So if you're a first-timers, and usually when I do this live, I ask folks to raise their hand in the audience if they are a GISP or if they're in the process of going for their GISP. So the GISP process, I see some hands raised. Thank you so much. When I went through it, I didn't have to go through this entire process, but I'm seeing some great hand raising. Awesome. So for first-timers, you do have to submit a portfolio. And essentially that portfolio is a collection of your education, so things like your college credentials and your transcript. So they'll want a certified copy of that. So they want to see, where you went to school, what did you learn, what kind of courses did you take, what was your major, what kind of program did you follow. They also want to know about your experience, right? Where have you worked? What have you done? What kind of things did you do at the jobs? What was the job description like? What were your duties and responsibilities? And then they also want contributions to the profession. And I think this is the one that gets the biggest question as far as the portfolio goes. What do they want to see? What is it that I have to do? What's involved in this hoop? Well, I can tell you, all of you right now are fulfilling that right now as we speak. Attending conferences, doing presentations, submitting posters and apps and maps and those kinds of things. They want to see you involved. They want to see if, it's not just all about doing your day to day. They want you out there, kind of fostering your growth, fostering the industry, fostering the knowledge and the education, and making a contribution to the profession in some positive way. So next NEURISA Day, reach out to us. Hey, I want to present. I'm going for my GISP, and I'd like to add that as one of my contributions to the profession. Or submit a map, right? Submit a poster, submit an app, something that you're proud of that you want to show off. That all counts. GIS Day is coming up in your respective states. Contributing to GIS Day with a presentation or a talk or somehow participating, that is a great way to kind of get those. And they have points essentially associated with each of these. So if you have your baccalaureate degree, it's so many points. If you have your master's, it's so many points. And you have to meet a minimum requirement for each of these. Yes, mentoring a teacher. I'm seeing some comments. Mentoring a teacher is definitely a great way to contribute to the profession. Thank you, Shannon. Absolutely, I endorse that. My wife is an elementary school teacher, and so I've kind of got an insider connection there myself. So definitely, absolutely, mentoring a teacher is a great way to contribute to the profession. There is a time experience requirement of 4 years minimum. So if you're just out of college, unfortunately, you don't quite qualify for the GISP. You've got to get a little bit of time under your belt. You've got to earn your wings a little bit. And so that 4 years minimum is definitely a requirement. And there is an ethics statement. And this is something I think that maybe some people take kind of a little bit too lightly. Again, not to throw limelight on our keynote, but that's going to be a great example of where someone was faced with an ethical challenge and kind of the decisions they made. But the ethics statement is important. We all want to make sure that we're staying within the moral confines of being on the right side of both the legal aspect of it as well as the ethical aspect of it. We never want to mislead with our data. We never want to do things illegally or that could get us in trouble or could create a problem. We never want to be a part of that. There's also $100 application fee. I mean, they've got things they have to pay for, employees and staff and postage and things like that. So that $100 application fee goes to that. And there's the $250 exam fee that goes to the testing facility. So the GISCI doesn't even see that $250. It's the testing facility that charges that because it is a standardized test. You've got to go to one of those centers where you sit at a computer and go through that exam there. So a little bit of cost, but consider an investment in yourself, right? You're not kind of throwing that money away. If you've already got your GISP, if you're part of the club already, how do you maintain it? It is something that you do have to continuously maintain and foster. Once you've achieved it, you don't want to kind of let it fall. So how do you keep it? Well, through constant education. Again, attending conferences like NEURISA Day is a great one. Attending GIS Day, attending workshops like the one being offered by Ms. Colby on tomorrow. So definitely, if you want to register for that, not to shamelessly plug that, but that's a great way to get education points, right? Work experience just by showing up every morning at your jobs, you're maintaining your GISP. Again, contributing to the profession, going to conferences, participating. And yes, there is a fee associated. Again, the GISCI has costs. There is no re-exam. So, if you've already have your GISP and you're looking at it and thinking, oh man, if I have to take that test, don't stress it. There's no exam necessary once you've got your GISP, but they do want to see that you're still active. You're still actively involved. Let's talk about the test, shall we? It's written by GSPs for GISPs, so you know that the questions there are based on, real world scenarios. They're based on things that you're going to have to know anyway, things that you've probably already learned, things that you're probably already doing. So all the questions aren't just these philosophical, thought up by folks who are, just pulling things from textbooks or pulling things out of the air. These are written by real folks who are doing the job every day. It's based on 4 years experience, right? We talked about that 4 years minimum. Well, that's kind of why. So they, consider there are things that within 4 years you should know, right? You should know the difference between vector data and raster data. You should know, how to, what splitting a polygon does. You should know. I mean, there are certain aspects of GIS that they're going to expect in 4 years you're going to be able to see and understand. And I'm getting some great questions and comments here. Is there a time frame regarding the application process? I believe there is, but I believe it's over a year. Like, they give you a good amount of time. The exam is really focused on applied knowledge. It's really looking at, how you do things. They look at 44 bits of knowledge, skills, and abilities. They call these KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So they have 44 areas that they consider different aspects, projections and geography and that kind of stuff. And there is a practice exam we'll get to in a second, and it uses the geospatial tech competency model, and you can Google this stuff. It's all on their webpage. You can go to the GISCI, and I'm going to keep talking about that as we go further. Minimum requirement of 73. So you've got to achieve at least that. That's a pretty respectable. If that's your score, well, then you almost worked too hard to not do better. I've looked at the exam, I've seen the exam, and achieving only a 73, unless you're really working at it, is kind of hard. I think I scored well into the upper 90s. So yeah, achieving a 73 is not hard. What are you going to be studying? What are these KSAs? What are these things? So you can see kind of the breakdown here. They're looking at conceptual foundations. So things like, understand what a region is, understand, very, very, rudimentary concepts within geography and GIS. Geospatial data fundamentals, again, difference between a vector and a raster. Cartography and visualization. So, knowing to put a north arrow and making sure that it difference between magnetic north versus true north. Visualization, talking about maybe clustering data, that kind of thing. Data acquisition. So again, bringing in, whether it's LiDAR data or GPS data or things like that. Data manipulation. Things like being able to sort and being able to isolate based on a selection. Analytical methods, maybe doing things like Kriging and things like that. Database design and management, again, understanding normalization, and how to set up domains and things like that. Application development, 7%, right? So being able to look at a situation and say, okay, geez, yeah, I know how to, provide a solution for something like that. System design and management. Again, looking at a geodatabase and determining, okay, is a personal file or, multi-user environment best for that? And then professional practice, right? So being able to deal with issues of professionalism. So again, you can kind of see the breakdown of things to study, and all this information is available on the GISCI webpage. So why have a test, right? Everyone said for years and years they didn't have a test. Why did they come up with a test? What was the purpose? Well, they wanted something beyond just the portfolio review to kind of look at what people's level of competency was, right? They had folks who were submitting this, and they were really kind of going on their word or the word of the university as far as what these folks knew. So they wanted to know, how can we measure this? How can we really kind of put a gauge on folks and determine what they know? They also wanted to increase the visibility, right? By putting in the test, suddenly everyone said, oh, the GISP. Oh, yeah, you took the test, and people are talking about it more, right? I know it's kind of cheesy, but it works, right? And by building visibility, it builds credibility, and people, recognize it, and then they understand what it is. And again, yeah, it solidifies the GISP, absolutely. For years, folks said how they felt that, the GISP was not as strong as it could be. There were all kind of questions, and by putting in that exam, there's no doubt you passed the GISP exam. You've kind of met the mark then, and you can kind of show something for that. And it does give a more specialized certification, right? It does really kind of establish that. And yes, it does advance the profession, I believe, because folks are, coming on board, and they're continuing to grow that number that we saw. So it definitely advanced the profession. All right, so here's where I talk about all that stuff. What can I do to help, right? Networking is huge. They say it's mostly about what you know, but also about who you know, right? That kind of gets us moved along in life. And LinkedIn is a professional platform for social media, is a great one. I'm on there. You can definitely look me up if you're in today's audience and you want to reach out to me afterwards and say, hey, I'd love to connect with you and maybe share some thoughts, share some ideas. But more than happy to bring you kind of into the fold. Build your portfolio. Start now. Start collecting samples of your work, your reports that you contribute to, publications that you put out, papers that you have published in various periodicals, your master's thesis. Put all that in there. All of that is great stuff. Yes, there is a practice exam. I saw a few folks ask about that. The sample test, Jesse asked about that, and absolutely. So the practice exam is on there. You can give it a swing, and they are questions that I guess that they've used in previous years, and then they kind of rotate them out. So yeah, the practice exam is up there. Professional association membership, NEURISA, your state GIS network and organizations, ASPERS, all those great folks. Definitely, that definitely works towards that participation and that contribution to the industry. And yeah, local user group participation, right? Sometimes we don't need to go beyond our back door. If your state has a local user group, if your region has a local user group, I know in some areas they have regional user groups, definitely jump into that. I have a question here. How can a grad student kind of best situate themselves once you have 4 years of work experience? All this stuff right here. Get your LinkedIn profile set up, give it that professional flair, try and keep LinkedIn professional. We really kind of want, I know you go on there and you see a whole lot of crazy stuff, but for this, you really want to keep it polished. You really want to keep professional and present yourself in the best professional light possible. And just carry yourself well. Carry yourself as a professional. Remember that when you're in this realm, you're representing the GIS industry. People are going to look at you and look at your jobs and look at your experience and look at kind of what you're all about, and that's going to have an impact on the rest of us. People are going to say, oh, geez, I know a lot of GIS folks, and they're this or they're that. People do that, unfortunately. So where does the future go? Where is the GIS-CI kind of taking this and running with it? Obviously, they're updating that exam. They're maintaining it. They're changing out the questions. They're adding new ones. They're taking other ones away. So that's a regular process. They're looking at a specialized GISP certification. I recently heard, we had the discussion with Nat Geo and the educator from California the other day, and they were talking about how there's going to be a teacher certification for GIS. That's awesome. I think that's fantastic. I can't talk enough about bringing GIS to the classroom, K-12 and higher ed. So having a teacher certification for GIS, I think, is absolutely outstanding. They're looking at increasing international growth. We saw that map, and there's a pretty big international presence. Well, they want to grow that. They want to bring more folks into that. So they want to, really, cover the globe in GISPs. And likewise, increase participation, 20,000 by the end of the decade, 20,000 GISPs. How awesome would that be? To kind of put a GISP in every organization, in every office. Wouldn't that be very, very cool? I mean, talk about job opportunities, talk about growing the industry, talk about opportunities for folks. I think that would be absolutely, absolutely awesome. And they have a GIS summer intern program. So you can reach out to the GISCI. You can go to their webpage and they have information on that. And there's all kind of benefits that summer intern gets by working for the GISCI. So go ahead and Google the GISCI. Again, you can find information on everything that I talked about. The practice exam is up there. The application is up there. They have a PDF you can download, and it will walk you through the requirements. There's a checklist. It's really, really great, to kind of, take full advantage of all the information that they have. Let's see, I'm getting asked here, do you have a time frame for the specialized? I don't. I wish I had more information on that. Like I said yesterday, hearing about it in the discussion was the first time. So keep your eyes and ears open. Check back on the GISCI page. And I'm sure it'll be blasted out by groups like NEURISA, and the program that we have that we're starting with the educators. Definitely take a look at that as well. We have a survey we're looking for folks to participate in to kind of make that connection between folks in the GIS industry and folks in the classroom, bringing GIS to young folks and really growing the youth movement and fostering the industry. So, Jay, if you're there, I'd love to have a conversation with you.
I was going to say, this is Jenny Byron. There's a couple other questions that came in. If you'd like to answer a few more.
Let's swing. Go ahead, Jenny.
Okay. All right. So one of them was, we all work with GIS in various ways, different ways. So how does the exam handle the fact that some people may no longer be doing the same thing that they say had a broad understanding of in GIS? How does this exam handle that some people are much more specialized or potentially more specialized?
Sure, and that's valid. I mean, you're going to have folks that are kind of siloed in terms of how they use GIS. I fully appreciate that. I've met a lot of folks in that kind of scenario. The great thing about the GISP exam is that it is really that broad. It's a 100+ questions that touch on everything, and so it's going to be broad enough that even if you're not doing it in your current job, you very likely have done it in the past. You know how to do it. Again, that practice exam is going to be key. Going through and looking at the body of knowledge, the technical body of knowledge they have up there, those core skills, knowledge skills that they have up there. That's going to be critical. You definitely want to go through there. It's not one of those exams where you just kind of want to show up on a whim and say, I'm going to take this today. You really want to kind of spend some time going through that. And if there are things that maybe, you're not familiar with, you have that opportunity, you probably have enough base knowledge to go and kind of read through some of the material and do a little bit of outside research and pick up whatever knowledge you need to in advance of the exam. But I can totally appreciate that. I think that is a big part of why they're looking at developing some of these more specialized GIS certifications. Great question.
And we have another one that came up from Isaiah Spencer saying that Are there any advantages and disadvantages between going for a GISP versus going for a master's degree in GIS?
I say there really shouldn't be an exclusion. Your master's is going to feed you with a lot of that information and that experience that you're going to need for attaining your GISP. Getting your master's is a big boost in the education points as well. The way it works is, so they have a minimum requirement number of points, but for instance, if you go for, let's say you kind of go crazy with your education, you go for your doctorate. Well, you far exceeded the base requirements they have for the points value for education. They allow you to take those extra points and kind of add them to areas where you might be a little bit short. So let's say that, your education is through the roof, but let's say your work experience, maybe you've only been working for, 5 or 6 years. So you don't have a whole lot of experience points. You can take all those extra points that you spent, learning and apply them to that. So absolutely, I think that there's no reason why it should be exclusionary to only choose one over the other. I say if you have your master's, go for your GISP. If you don't have your master's, go for your master's, and then go for your GISP.
No, that's great. And another question that seems to also be answered a bit in the chat, but maybe you have some more information about it, is what are the course offerings to prepare for the GISP process and the test?
Right. So NEURISA, because they're also a partner with the GISCI, they offer a preparation course. Definitely, I would highly recommend it. NEURISA doesn't do anything half-baked, so their preparation course is really going to give you a whole lot of information to kind of prepare for it, to get your stuff in order and to kind of help you along the process. So the NEURISA course is definitely highly recommended to folks. And like I said, the practice exam is out there. And discussions like today, right, where you can kind of get an overview, a 5,000-foot overview of the GISP, and then have a chance to ask questions. Reach out to any GISP that you come across or that you see kind of out there, and they should be more than happy to discuss with you, to kind of provide you with the information, the experience, and some guidance.
That's great. And one other thing is sort of a bit of a broader question, more your thoughts on it are, how do GISP certified professionals stand out from the crowd? Are there salary benefits when getting this certification? Is there anything that sort of makes them really, aside from just having the certification, is there something that really brings out this certification in their lives?
I kind of tongue-in-cheek call this the money question. Everyone wants to know, is this gonna help me earn my fame and fortunes in GIS? I can tell you in my experience that I've run across instances where employers are almost making that one of the requirements, or they're giving an added point, if you will. I was in a situation where I was on a panel, an interview panel for an organization, and we had half a dozen folks who applied for the same job. 2 of them had the GISP credential. And I got to be honest, those 2 rose to the top first and foremost. So, it really kind of did give that advantage. So yeah, I do know of employers who do give bumps in salary once the GISP is awarded or is achieved. Again, that's going to be on employer by employer basis, but it really would be up to the employer to kind of see the value in the GISP and having the GISP as well. I mean, if you work for an engineering firm and you go for a job, 9 times out of 10, the client is going to choose the firm that has the GISP associated with them, simply because hopefully they recognize the value that having a GISP on that team makes. And so, while it won't maybe be a direct benefit to the individual financially, it could mean the difference between getting a job and not getting a job, winning a project and not winning a project. So like I said, there aren't direct financial, benefits, but it certainly could lead to them. That's for sure. Great question. I get that all the time.
I would think so too. And this seems to be the last one I have so far is, can anyone in the audience confirm if legacy rules are still in place? I think that might have been in reference to whether,
The grandfathering. Yeah,
yes, yeah.
I'd have to go back and look. Like I said, ironically, I know many of the folks who I knew who were in my professional circle who were grandfathered in at the time have since retired. Because I mean, you had folks at that point who were, 15, 18, 20 years into the profession, and they figured, well, having the GISP, this is new. We liked the idea of having a credential, and finally, and so many of them retired, though, because I mean, at this point they'd be 40 years into their position, 50 years into the position. I don't know too many people who are in one spot, and I'm getting word here that someone's saying that they don't believe that grandfathering. Yeah, they said grandfathering ended in 2015 when the exam was introduced. So there you go. I'll go with that. I agree with that, and I probably see justification for that. So yeah, so grandfathering, it looks like, is no longer in place.
Hey, Thad, this is Jay. To add on to that point, though, just so I'm clear, that once you've taken your certification and you're active, that so long as you keep reactivating every couple of years, right, 4 years, I think it is, once you keep activating, you're grandfathered into what you were first accepted. So if they change things after you've already started passing the course and being a GISP, just so I'm clear, that you would then be beholden to the new grandfathering kind of clause. Does that sound right?
So kind of roundabout answer. So yeah, so like I said, when I jumped in the boat and earned my GISP, the only options they had were either grandfathering or portfolio. I went portfolio because I didn't have the grandfathering, and to be honest, at the time, my opinion was that I wanted the portfolio review because I wanted to see if I kind of stood up to the test. I wanted to see if I met the litmus test for GISP. That was a personal, professional opinion of mine. And so, yeah, so I went in via the portfolio. I'd be more than happy to take the test now if they required it. But because I'm on maintenance, if you will, I do not have to take the test. So for those of you who are out there who are GISPs, as long as you maintain it by fulfilling the point requirements, your education, your contributions to the industry, so on and so forth, you do not have to take the test. Now, if you let your GISP lapse and you have to re-up, that very well might require you to take the test. So that would be something you'd have to look into at that time. But if you're currently a GISP based on whether it's you're the grandfathering, or if you passed the exam once already, or you went in based on portfolio review, you're good to go as long as you maintain it.
So my other question, Thad, I actually wanted to pick up on something that Isaiah asked a minute ago. And I know that you're not going to want to probably pontificate on what you would do if you were a 23-year-old graduating with your undergrad and thinking about your next steps in your GIS degree. But can you take and maybe the answer is no, and that's fine. Would you mind taking a brief trip out of your body to think, if you were that age, do you think that there would be, do you think there's benefit to spending more time in school, to getting your master's, and then, as you said, right, your master's plays into your GISP, so it's not taking away from it. But as far as the time investment, the monetary investment for your master's and all that, would you say it's more of a decision about where you want to go for your career, and maybe if that master's would play a big enough part in that, or do you think they're really mutually exclusive, that each is good in its own right?
Jay, if you don't think I like to pontificate, you don't know me very well. Yeah, no. So here I am. I'll share a little bit of insight into my outside life, if you will, behind the scenes. So as it says kind of in my speaker bio, when I'm not fulfilling my day job here for the town of South Windsor, Connecticut, I also teach at Central Connecticut State University, shameless plug. And so I kind of get this question all the time from folks. Students, they see my credential, they know my involvement, and so they ask, and I've met plenty of young folks at our conference, at NEURISA days, at GIS days. So they ask me that very question. Hey, listen, I'm an undergrad, or geez, I just graduated with my baccalaureate. I'm thinking about going for my master's, but this GISP thing is there too. What do I do? I always say to them, look, it's really an individual choice, and it comes down to a bunch of factors. And you can't just say it's professional, because everybody has different situations in their life. If folks are fortunate enough that they can go for further education, I always encourage that. Further education is never, ever, ever a bad thing. I believe that as a personal philosophy, we should never stop learning, no matter what. That should be the basis for so many things in life. So never stop learning. If that involves going for your master's degree, then by all means, if you have the opportunity, I highly, 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 I will shout it from the top of every mountain, recommend it. Using that to kind of feed that basis for the GISP exam, for achieving your GISP, yeah, I think that, it shouldn't be exclusive. One should not be exclusive of the other. If you want to go for your baccalaureate and you don't have the means to go for your master's, that's okay. Look, there's 1,001 other resources to learn, right? And get that experience and that knowledge. So yeah, wait a few years, get some wind beneath your wings, and then go for the GISP. There's not a requirement to have the master's degree. Like I said, it is a huge boon and bonus in terms of the points that you use for education. So yeah, I really think it comes down to personal choice, personal financial situations. Obviously, education is not cheap, and it's not getting any cheaper right now. But yeah, I think that, furthering education is always a great idea if it can be done. And a formal environment is always great. But yeah, no, I don't think it should be exclusive. I think that folks should really, consider both if they can, but going for the GISP should be kind of a professional goal that we in the industry should all have. That's, again, personal, professional opinion.
That's a great point, Thad.
Yeah, that was a great point. I have a couple of other questions here. Is there a list of colleges and universities that offer GIS?
I'm sure there is. I know that NEURISA was compiling a list of universities and geography departments in New England. But I'd guarantee there are resources out there where you can go and look. In New England alone, I know that there are several big ones. I know, obviously, Clark, shameless plug for the Mapathon that's coming up. Clark University, one of the oldest geography departments in the country, has a fantastic GIS program. Shameless plug for CCSU, has a fantastic GIS program. University of Connecticut, University of Massachusetts, University of Vermont has an outstanding program. Yeah, they're out there. You can probably, there you go. I'm getting all kind of stuff. Framingham State University, they contributed to NEURISA Day a couple years ago. Yeah, all you have to do essentially is Google college or university GIS course, and you'll probably pull them up. But New England, there's a smattering. I mean, you go further outside of New England. Penn State University has a great GIS program. University of Chicago has an outstanding GIS and geography program. UCal Berkeley, I could go on and on and on. If you Google it, you'll find that it's out there.
And I can see that that we've put in Cynthia Gaines has put in a NEURISA, our website that has neurisa.org/education, and that has a list of them that's been compiled, which is great. So that's in the chat. Another question that's come out is, does NEURISA help people get their GISP?
So roundabout way. We're not going to be sending out big checks for $100 to anyone. We'd love to, but unless we want to get 1,000 sponsors, which we'd love. Don't get me wrong, as the treasurer. Hey, listen, if any sponsors out there want to contribute thousands of dollars, we are more than happy to use it that way. But no, in all honesty and sincerity, so NEURISA does in a way help you. To be blatantly honest, it does. We provide you the platform. We provide you with the opportunity through NEURISA Days, through the things like Judy Colby's talk in a workshop for education. Yeah, we do in a way help you. Is it financially? No, unfortunately, it's not. So you'll have to kind of shake out your couch cushions and maybe ask for some Christmas gifts early. But we do provide an educational basis, which is monumentally important to achieving the GISP. We also offer that opportunity to contribute back to the profession. So in a way, we kind of do.
That's great.
And I would like to just, Jenny, I want to second that thought from Thad. That was my thought right away, right? Like, do we support it? But no, but if you're a part of NEURISA and you spend time with us and you can volunteer for a subcommittee, or if you can volunteer, just because we're the board of directors, we take a lot of outside assistance. We have lots of voluntary positions to help us with our professional development committee. We're constantly looking for volunteers for events. And actually, this is an area I've done some research on my own, because part of the portfolio for the GISP means really adding up every single thing you've done to get to this point. And
the sooner you start that, not to interrupt, the sooner you start that, the easier it is. I can tell you when I went for mine, and I had to do that portfolio at the time, it was a monumental task that I put off for at least 3 to 6 months, just because trying to gather the information and saying, oh, that's right, I did this, and oh, I did that. And, every map that I made, I suddenly found myself exporting to PDF and putting up on Google Drive or something for myself, so that when it comes time to re-up, I know where to go for those samples of work. So the sooner you start working on that portfolio, the better you'll be.
And Thad really took my other point, but that's to add on to what Thad said. I think that when I went through and started thinking about the things I'm involved with now, of course, being the president of the board gives you points, but then every subcommittee I'm in, I'm also on the board for the Rhode Island, the RIGIS committee, the Rhode Island GIS committee. And so just the way I think about it is, the more involved you are, the more you're giving your time to actually help. No, okay, you're not getting paid for it, but it is paying dividends in your professional development. And as far as I'm concerned, when I looked at the portfolio, I was pleasantly surprised that basically by doing what I'm doing now, by being involved with NEURISA, by hosting events, by moderating discussions, those all give you points towards what you're doing. And to really add on to Thad's point, this is just professional development in general. I'm going to echo what Thad said. What I've been trying to do is keep snapshots of things as I'm doing them. I'll either start a story map for myself and use the story map as a working draft, but what I end up with is a portfolio of work. And I have to say that outside of GIS or inside of GIS, I think it's important for GIS professionals to really think about, what is your portfolio? Yes, GIS is based in data. So if you're a data-minded person, great. Can you show some snippets of code you've done? Can you talk about ways and projects things you've done to automate processes or to help problem solve? And no matter what side of GIS you're in, I think it's important to show prospective employers, or when you get into the GISP certification, to have that portfolio, even as a supplemental piece of information to show who you are. Because I think that when you're collecting things for that as you work, like Thad said, that way you're not scrambling to find things. To me, I feel like if you start that process early and you start to take snippets of your work and catalog it and keep track of it, it can only help you when you're going for this. So Thad, I think it's a great added to where I was going. I appreciate that. So
Jay, I want to touch on a couple of things. One with regards to that portfolio. I remember being way back when, going for that first job and sitting down with sweaty palms across the table from the prospective employer, and feeling that deer in the headlights kind of feeling that we all get. As silly as it sounded, I walked in there, I had my portfolio under my arm, and I kept it in my lap the whole time. And, when it got to that conversation, which every prospective employer has, hey, can you tell us a little bit about, what you've done? What's your experience? Being able to pull out, or reference, nowadays, gosh, I bet it's going to be something like an iPad. I'm dating myself. But folks are going to be like, hey, let me show you this web app I made. Let me show you this web mapper. Pull up this website on your computer there, and you can kind of see my work and what I've done in the past. that's going to be vital. That's going to really, again, set you apart from others. And that's what we're all trying to do. So again, I go back to this old adage, and this is the conversation I have with folks when I talk to them about, geez, I just graduated. How do I get that first job? And this is a sad truth, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, or whatever your judgment is, that's fine. Who gets you the interview. What gets you the job. Right? So that's why I always say that networking part is so vitally important, because who will get you the interview, but it's what that gets you the job. So having that portfolio and being able to show them that what is huge. I also see someone on here on the chats talking about proprietary data and things like that. When you submit stuff to the GISCI, you really, it's going to be viewed by others, right? Whether it's just the people on the review board or whoever. So you do want to be respectful. If there's a way to, whitewash or to redact or to do whatever to make it safe for viewing by, cleared individuals, that's what I would do. So whether it's, removing text or changing text to, symbols or something, you're going to have to get creative if that's kind of, all the experience or all the products that you've created. You want to be respectful of your employers. You want to be respectful of clients and those kinds of things. I recall I used a lot of stuff when I applied. I used a lot of stuff from university. So it was cleared through kind of the academic umbrella. But the point I'm trying to make here is, you have to be respectful. You don't want it, again, that's that first ethics test that you're going to face, right? You're going to be asked to sign as part of the package. You're going to ask to be signed that ethics statement, and it is lengthy. You want to read through it and make sure that you abide by everything it's saying, and that's part of it, right? You want to keep secure those things which your clients ask you to keep secure, and so by submitting client data or samples of client data without their acknowledgement, or by kind of outing something maybe they don't want outed, would kind of be a violation of that ethics statement that you're signing as part of your submission package. So again, you want to be respectful.
And Thad, I think to add to that, and you brought up Rebecca earlier, honestly, and I'm going to ask this question honestly, the question is, would Rebecca have done the same thing if she weren't already a GISP, if she didn't have the code of ethics in her mind, and if it wasn't ringing in her ears that things didn't seem right? Would she be as empowered to do what she did? Now, working for the Rhode Island Department of Health like I do, I have definitely seen situations where I've questioned what's been happening, but I think that maybe deep down it's resonating with me, but I'm maybe unsure about that. I haven't looked at the GISP Code of Ethics or the GIS Code of Ethics extensively. I haven't signed my name where I want to keep my integrity. No, I haven't signed my name on the dotted line. I'm going to do it. Yeah. I haven't signed my name on the dotted line yet, but I think that once you do that, it raises your awareness. And I think that to Thad's point, it's not about showing exactly what you've done. If you have to redact the whole thing, okay, but it's actually about the conversation, because I know that when I've been in interview situations, I want to know more about what you know. And if you can walk me through exactly why you redacted things and what you did and, your process, that's enough. That's more, like Thad said, that sets you above. And that's the thing where I've held interviews. We had 300 something applicants for a Rhode Island Department of Health position. And I agree. You see GISP right away. That's a flag. If I would see any type of an interesting resume, that's a flag. Each one of these things raises you up the level. I can say that before I was in a hiring situation, I would have some contempt for people who couldn't get back to me and say, hey, I got your resume, thanks, or here's the process. Being on the other side of it, getting 300 resumes, it's oppressive because you have to look through them, you have to read through them. And so the first test might be, does this resume look good to me? I might not even read it, but I might pull out the ones that look good because I want something that's engaging. I want to know more about you. And seeing those 4 letters, GISP, after someone's name, I instantly know that they've been validated by the GIS industry. And that gives me one more level of expertise. And honestly, maybe I've lucked out getting to where I am without my GISP. But that's why I think right now I really believe in it. And I really want to keep adding to that so we can keep raising the bar for everyone.
So Jay, you brought up an interesting point that I want to kind of raise. I mean, I don't need to say that we're in interesting times right now. That's been beat like a dead horse. But where I'm going with this is, so COVID, with regards to its role with GIS, I think is just like everything else unprecedented. But where I'm going with this is that as GIS folks, many of us, and maybe not all of us, but many of us have been put in situations on a regular basis now where we're faced with HIPAA data. Okay. Right now, in my current position for the town of South Windsor, we provide a COVID webpage, shameless plug, but we provide a COVID information webpage for folks where we talk about the numbers of cases and those that are past quarantine, to provide that information, just like Rebecca did, to allow folks to be aware of the situation, to make choices and decisions on their behalf and on the behalf of their family and for the health and safety of their family. And so I am provided with information regularly, daily, multiple times a week, by the health inspector here in town, who is given where cases are in town. And she provides that information to me so that I can provide it to the police department, so that they know when they're going into a situation, what they should be aware of. Well, obviously there's address information on there, and I make a point to strip it out. I strip it out and I generalize the information, because I know that I don't have HIPAA clearance. I don't want to know where these people live. I don't want to know their name. I don't want to know anything about them. Give me their census tract location, and let me work with it that way. I know I'm not cleared for the HIPAA. So that's a choice that I'm making. I've already spoken, and that's how I get the information from the health officer here. And Jay, you're in the same position, right? You work in a situation where you're dealing with HIPAA information all the time. And so again, it's that ethical challenge, oh geez, it'd be very easy just to map the address, right? Geocode the address and be done with it, move on. But we know that's not right. I'm not qualified for HIPAA clearance. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not gonna push that. So it's those kinds of things where, you sign that ethics statement and think, oh, that'll never come into play. Oh, I'll never have to deal with that. I'm just the GIS person. I'm going to be the one that's going to make the maps and this, that, and the other. I'm not going to deal with that. But suddenly instances like this, and I'm sure Rebecca never, ever, and you can ask her this too, Jay, I'm sure she never, ever expected to be dealing in a situation where she's facing an ethical challenge and she has to make the right choice. And yet here we are in this situation where, yeah, that's a big role of how we all play. So something that really shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think that every GISP should really take a moment to recognize that, hey, look, we signed that ethics statement, and, we agreed to act in an ethically and morally right way.
That's 100%. And I can tell you that we will be talking a little bit about Rebecca's view on the code of ethics and really what brought her, the process that she went through in her own mind to get to the point where we are now. But the GIS code of ethics was a really big part of that. I just saw Matt Barrett, one of our board members, mention that having the GISP, when he's dealing with other people, surveyors and other contractors, it gives him another level of respect, I think, to paraphrase his words. And I think that's another thing too. My in-laws are both architects, so they have their professional certification, and that is an arduous process. But when you get out of that, no one's questioning whether you know what you're doing. And I think that's the thing here, right? The GISP, once you go through it, you will you'll find, I think, that it just keeps paying dividends. And Cynthia Gaines from our board just said that we have over 50 registrants who are GISPs. I was going to joke and say, kind of more of a knockdown myself. Look at the board of directors for NEURISA. Most of us have our GISP. Well, not me. Most of them, we have GISP certifications. But I'm not in that group. On board. I know, I'm not in that group. So last year's Thad's talk really lit a fire under me, because I was contemplating getting my master's, but I was thinking, I'm not 22 years old. Sorry to break my age to everyone. I'm not 22. And for me, it's more about, in my professional life moving forward, what's the best move for me? And I think the GISP 100% is. So honestly, I'm going to tell you all right now, by next year's conference, if I don't have my GISP, we're going to get a dunk tank, and I'm going to be, that's it. Everyone, you can raffle off tosses for the dunk tank, and I'll take my punishment. So
I guess I'd like to hear, it'd be interesting to hear from someone who's maybe kind of on the fence. Someone who's, saying to themselves, geez, do I really need this? Is there really a, what kind of justification, do I need to really go for this or to really sell it? Because it's easy for those of us who kind of drink the Kool-Aid, right? It's easy for us who kind of look at this and say, oh, I see the value, I see the reason behind it, I see what it's all about. But there are those who are going to be out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with questioning questioning the GISP or questioning the justification behind it. I think it's human nature. But I think that the conversation, isn't gonna stop. So that it's necessary. It's necessary because it continues to kind of lend the credibility to the GISP, to the need for the GISP, and to the seriousness of it and the respect that it deserves. So if there's anyone out there who's kind of on the fence and they're not quite sure, even after today's presentation or anything, I'd be more than happy. If my email is there on the bottom of the screen, you can reach out to me there. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Because like I said, I think that conversation is natural. I think that folks look at this and say, oh, geez, what's it really going to get me? We had the money question as I referred to it. How is it going to benefit me? I'm going to make this $350 payment essentially, and I'm going to go through all these hoops, and is it going to be worth it? So I actually welcome that conversation because I think that it continues to kind of build the foundation.
Thad, do you want to kind of close it up and any final thoughts, and then we'll move on?
I think I would, Jay. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So what I tried to do today and what I tried to present, hopefully, is to offer you the information you need to kind of start making that decision, to start looking at the GISP and think, okay, is this something that I see valuable? If you're an employer, hopefully I provide you with some information about, why should I choose an employee or a potential employee who has a GISP? What's the value? What's the reason behind it? And by providing you some of the background information, kind of showing you that, hey, look, this isn't something that was just kind of thrown together. This isn't something that's offered by a fly-by-night organization or that's just worth the piece of paper that it's printed on. It's the real deal. It's worth it. It's definitely something that the industry needs and should continue to foster and grow. And like I said, I'd love to see that 20,000 GISP and the worldwide coverage happen within the next decade. I think that would be great. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for attending. I want to thank the board, my fellow board members, for allowing me to speak to you today. It's been my pleasure. If you have any questions after this, please do not hesitate to blow up my email. Please look for me out on LinkedIn. I'm out there. I'd love to hear from you, and my best to everybody listening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Thad. This was amazing. Let's all get our GISPs.